for a Bengals defense that finished 25th in sacks, despite, as I said earlier, Trey Hendrickson finishing as the NFL's league leader in sacks, y'all. But the Bengals defense finished 25th. Yeah, I think that it might be possible that that would be a good thing to focus on for the defense in the upcoming season. Welcome to the jungle, everyone. I'm Kyle Phelps, and the Bengals have one chance to get this right. As you recall, the Bengals missed the playoffs for a second straight season, despite Joe Burrow finishing as the league's leader in passing yards and touchdowns. Jamar Chase finishing with the Triple Crown as the league's leader in receptions, yards, and touchdowns, and Trey Hendrickson finishing as the league's leader in sacks. Not great. Heads accordingly rolled, and one of the casualties was defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. Now, Zach Taylor is essentially being given the opportunity to hit the reset button on his staff. He won't get this chance again, but he needs to get the hire right like he seems to have done with offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher. They got a good opportunity because the last time that they were interviewing defensive coordinators, they got turned down by basically everybody that they were looking at, and Zach had to go call on his old buddy Lou Anarumo, be like, hey, we need somebody to do the defense here. Can you just do it for now? And then he just kind of stayed for a while. So we're going to be breaking down the options today. Before we get into that though, I appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get the wish list guys out of the way first, right? Because I'm not exactly expecting the Bengals to hire any of these guys. But, as I said, when the Bengals originally hired Anarumo, it came as the result of literally every other candidate that the Bengals pursued at the time turning down the job. At the time, the Bengals looked like a complete dumpster fire, and Zach was seen as an experimental coach, so experienced guys didn't want to necessarily, put their name behind something like that. Obviously, the Bengals are a much more established team at this point than they were back in 2019. They've poured a lot of resources into the defense, in particular money, but they've also poured some draft picks into the defense, and there's way more talent on this squad now than there was in 2019, despite the less than ideal results over the last couple of seasons. Therefore, I think it's going to be a much more attractive job this time around. My absolute dream scenario is Robert Saleh. The Jets fired him for dubious reasons, let's say, after a 2-3 start. In fairness, he did have a 20-36 record with the team and never finished a season better than 7-10, so team owner Woody Johnson probably wasn't too happy with that, and he probably wasn't too happy with the fact that in addition to all of that, the offense was only averaging 18.6 points per game, despite massive investments into Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. There were also some political accusations of the reasons why there was a firing of Robert Saleh and a rift with Aaron Rodgers. But results didn't improve after the firing, so, none of it really matters. They finished 5-11, though, and only broke the 30-point mark twice the entire rest of the season, so I don't think it was exactly his fault. That said, they sported a top 5 passing defense in virtually every relevant category in every single season that Saleh was the coach there, so might be nice if we could get a little bit of that magic, Honestly, if we're looking at former head coaches, there are a few decent other options that might help Zach run the team well. I don't know if he's necessarily going to go for them. Look, there's Jack Del Rio. I'd love Matt Eberflus. Brian Flores, not you. Hell, maybe the Bengals could talk Aaron Glenn into coming to a different Cat team, right? Now, a more realistic option might be Al Golden, who was the Bengals linebacker coach when they went to the Super Bowl with Zach a few years ago. He spent some time as the Miami Hurricanes head coach prior to that, earlier in the decade, and then left the Bengals to take a defensive coordinator position with Notre Dame, where he's done a phenomenal job. That said, I think Zach wants to stay in as much control of the squad as he can. In general, that does seem to be the way he operates. The Bengals have already interviewed Raiders defensive coordinator Patrick Graham and Patriots defensive coordinator DeMarcus Covington for the job. They do seem to kind of be what the Bengals look for in a lot of these hires. Young, not ridiculously strong personalities, still got some experience. Both have spent a significant chunk of their careers learning from arguably the greatest defensive head coach of all time, Bill Belichick. For what it's worth, though, I'm not a huge fan of either of these guys. Both Graham and Covington have overseen below-average defenses during the course of their careers. Covington doesn't have a long track record of it like Graham does, but he is getting disappointing results from a Patriots defense that was humming before he took over. I will say, though, with Dejon Anthony saying that the guy the Bengals are hiring is going to shock everybody, I would imagine it's probably not going to be one of these two guys, right? I also want to throw one more name into the ring. I don't know if he'd be the right fit with Zach, but I also hope that Zach isn't necessarily just hiring his friends out there. You know, he's been accused of nepotism before, and I just hope that's not true. But Jim Leonhard, the Broncos passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach, to me, seems like a really good option for the type of guy that the Bengals tend to go for, right? He has helped the Broncos defense under Sean Payton rank 6th in opponents' explosive passing plays this season, as well as number 1 in the NFL in sacks. And for a Bengals defense that finished 25th in sacks, despite, as I said earlier, Trey Hendrickson finishing as the NFL's league leader in sacks, y'all. But the Bengals defense finished 25th. Yeah, I think that it might be possible that that would be a good thing to focus on for the defense in the upcoming season. Plus, for what it's worth, one thing that he shares in common with Lou Anarumo that would actually be kind of useful is his emphasis on stopping big plays. Now, the difference is he doesn't seem to just completely sell out the entire rest of the defense just to stop big plays, which is really quite cumbersome with Lou Anarumo when it seems like every single drive, I mean, not every single drive, but sometimes it feels like every single drive, they're just marching down the field, and then the Bengals, like, magically hold them to a field goal when they're doing well, or they just let them get touchdowns all game when they're not doing well, which was quite a bit of this year, right? But point being, it wouldn't be a huge philosophical transition for the players on the team. So basically what I'm saying is, if I'm Zach, which I'm not, then I'm targeting Saleh, Golden, or Leonard. And again, I'm not, so there are certain considerations that Zach is going to have that I would never know about. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below who you think is the Bengals' best target for defensive coordinator this offseason. And I'll feature the best ones in my next video, like this one from Mikey, who said in my video about how the Bengals could make the playoffs, we have the same record. Okay, at the time, yes, Mikey, but we finished with a winning record at the end of all of that. So now we don't have the same record, which is nice. But hey, that's why I told Dennis Allen to fuck off, essentially, earlier in this video, if you noticed that. I'll leave y'all, as always, with a hootie!